I married a billionaire to save my family, but I fell for my best friend instead. My husband, Julian, was just a means to an end. He was a cold, distant man in a mansion who gave me everything except the one thing I desperately craved, love. That I found with Leo. I found it in stolen moments and whispered promises in the city gardens. For an entire year, I lived a double life. At glittering galas, I was the perfect society wife. My hand resting lightly on Julian's arm, my smile never quite reaching my eyes. Those eyes were always secretly scanning the crowd for Leo. But at home, I was a ghost, just drifting through silent, empty halls, counting down the days until I could file for divorce and claim my freedom. Our one-year marriage contract guaranteed me an inheritance, and my time was almost up. I thought I was so careful. I really thought Julian, who was always buried in his work, was completely oblivious. The night of our first anniversary, he threw a lavish party in our honor. I wore a gown that cost more than my father's medical bills, and a diamond collar around my neck that felt more like a chain. In the middle of the party, I was dancing with Leo, who was posing as a caterer for the night when I felt a familiar heavy gaze on me. Across the ballroom, Julian was watching us, his expression completely unreadable. A chill ran down my spine, but I dismissed it. He never looked at me long enough to actually see anything. Later that night, as I was getting ready to sneak out to meet Leo, Julian entered my bedroom. This was rare. He almost never came in. In his hand was not the legal papers for our separation, but a small familiar journal. It was my journal. The one I kept hidden in a locked drawer. My blood ran cold. "I thought we should talk, Isabella," he said. His voice was quiet without any of the anger I expected. He tossed the journal onto the bed. "I've known about Leo for 11 months. The air left my lungs. 11 months? He gave a slow, painful nod. "I've known since the first time he made you laugh. I have security cameras in the gardens, my love. I installed them for your safety." He paused, and for the first time, his stormy eyes showed the deep hurt he'd been hiding. "I know he calls you Belle. I know he brings you sunflowers because they're your favorite. I know he makes you feel alive." Shame and terror coiled in my stomach. "If you knew," I whispered. "Why? Why didn't you say anything? Why let me humiliate you like this?" "Because I was waiting," he said, his voice cracking. "I was waiting for you to look at me the way you look at him. Just once." He walked over to the window, his back to me, a silhouette of profound loneliness. "This contract was never about your inheritance, Isabella. My company was never in trouble. I created the entire pretense to get you to marry me." "What are you talking about?" I stammered, completely lost. "I fell in love with you 3 years ago," he confessed, still facing the window. "At that little art exhibition you curated for struggling artists. You were defending a painter's work and your eyes were blazing with passion. I was just another billionaire in the crowd, but you were a force of nature. I tried to approach you normally, but you were always surrounded, always so. Untouchable." He finally turned, and the raw vulnerability on his face shattered the image I had of him as an unfeeling fortress. "The only way I could get you to see me, to even let me into your life, was to create a crisis you couldn't solve alone. So I did. I became your crisis." The revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. All this time, I thought I was using him, but he had orchestrated the entire situation just to be near me. "Everything I have done this past year," he continued, his gaze holding mine. "Every piece of art I bought for you, every book I left on your nightstand that I noticed you were reading, every time I stayed up late just to hear you come home, it was all for you. I was trying to love you in the only way I knew how, by giving you a world where you never had to want for anything. Except I now realize you wanted the one thing I was too afraid to give you outright, my heart." He picked up my journal, his touch surprisingly gentle. "You can have your divorce. You can have Leo. The inheritance is already in your account. But you should know," he said, his eyes glistening, "the man you call your husband has loved you, truly and completely, since the moment he saw you. And he will love you long after you've walked out that door." He left then, closing the door with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. I stood there, surrounded by all the luxurious evidence of his love, and I realized the greatest betrayal was not mine, but my own blindness. I had been so busy looking for a dramatic, poetic kind of love that I didn't see the quiet, steadfast one that had been building a fortress around me all along. As I sank to the floor, the journal fell from my hands, open to a page where I'd written about Leo, and that's when I saw it. A single faint pencil mark in Julian's distinct handwriting right in the margin next to my words. It was a silent, heartbreaking correction that simply read, "It was me. I was the one who sent you the first sunflower."